Hey everyone, thanks as always for checking out the Word podcast. We recorded this week's episode late Thursday night, and within a matter of hours, there were some significant developments concerning a few topics that we cover in the show, specifically around the protest in Minneapolis. So some of the discussion that we have may seem a little bit dated, but we hope everyone enjoys it nonetheless, and we certainly send our best to everyone out there who's having a hard time right now.
Welcome back to another episode of the Word podcast, sports news and stuff. I am James Mundia, joined by my esteemed partner in crime, Richard Bruce Jefferson Abernathy. And welcome to the latest episode. Always good to have you on, or to be back on with you, Mr. Abernathy.
Thank you, Mr. Mundia. I didn't realize we were being so formal on the show today.
We're switching up the format. The Word podcast, sports news and stuff. Of course, happy to be back with you. Please feel free to subscribe on all the podcast streaming options you have. You have Spotify. You've got Apple. You've got Spreaker. We just joined Google Podcasts, which is a new platform. And, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at The Word Podcast.
And feel free to give us a review and a 5-star rating.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever rating you feel like we deserve, plus 5 stars.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to do it. One of my favorite podcasters, he's like, if you love the show, give it a 5-star rating. If you hate the show, give it a 5-star rating. So, we're just going to cover all our bases. So obviously, the world's still dealing with COVID-19, but it's kind of an exceptionally wild week in the world and news as we pass 100,000 deaths. We're getting some more news about sports leagues attempting to return, or at least talking about it. And one of the more weird and also kind of depressing political weeks kind of snuck in out of nowhere. That's turned the dialogue in the country as if it wasn't that great before, but now it seems to have continued to deteriorate. Yeah,
it seems like it's kind of a powder keg out there, just waiting for a match right now.
Oh my gosh.
On a lot of different fronts and a lot of different places for a variety of reasons. And we do try to keep it positive on the show. That's one of our, if we had like a code or a mission statement or whatever companies have that are just lame ways to get employees to fall in line. If we were to have one of those, I think chief among them would be to try to find silver linings, be positive. You can still be critical, but let's try to find the good and figure out answers rather than just bitching and moaning. But it's been really hard the last couple of days.
Oh my gosh.
I don't want to delve into it too much, but between the situation in Minneapolis after the murder of George Floyd and everything that's gone on in the wake of that, the continued coronavirus issues and demonstrations and chicanery and all that. And now you've got the thinnest skinned president ever when is claiming censorship when they don't even censor his tweet. They just add an addendum and say, hey, for more truthful information on this, go here, and he can't handle it. And it's all just a bit much. And we were talking about it in the green room. I watched the last hour or so of Joker on HBO last night, and it felt a little too close to home.
Whoa.
Just everybody just kind of on edge and angry and not in a good place. And I mean, it's not a movie, so it's hopefully not going to happen in such a way, but it was a reminder that everybody's really on edge right now, for the most part, for pretty good reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough out there. And the situation with George Floyd, I mean, your hearts have to go out to his friends and family, and to see situations like this continue to happen for relatively innocuous suspicions of crimes. I mean, you've got a guy like him who's suspected of writing bad checks and dies in the course of being arrested. And then you have people who are wanted for murder that get brought in with absolutely no harm done to them whatsoever. Or in the case of the kid several years ago in Charleston who went in the church and killed a bunch of people, cops bought him Burger King.
Oh, what?
Yeah, Dylan Roof.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. So you hate to see the inequality that's inherent in our criminal justice system continue to play out in such a way. And I don't want to go too deep into it. I don't know that I'm necessarily the right person to do that for a number of reasons, but I couldn't do the show tonight and not at least address it in small part and just say that our hearts go out to people who continue to suffer from these types of things and bear the brunt of whatever prejudices or bad policing or whatever term you would like to use to describe it. It's heart wrenching, and it really kind of did a number on me, and it was just kind of coming at a bad time with everything else going on. So I just think a lot of people are hurting, a lot of people are grieving, and we need to try to find a way to kind of bring everybody together and find something positive to work towards together rather than continuing to go at each other and hurt one another and lack basic empathy.
Yeah, it's a scary time, like from a logistics perspective, like like the whole idea of reopenings and but then it's also scary, like you said, it seems like everybody's on edge, and it's a really unnerving feeling. Like I've kind of internalized a lot of that today and yesterday. I was kind of wondering why I was feeling a little bit off, and I even mentioned that when we first got on the green room. It's like, you can't really affect these outside events, but you feel affected by them, and you want like some sort of, I guess you have to be intentional and look for like reasons to be hopeful or whatever, and uh because it doesn't seem like we're going to get much help if it's not just going to fall into our laps. Uh and even with coronavirus, it also seems like there isn't like a way to get past the absurdity of there's still so much confusion. And I think that's what was interesting about Twitter's move to label the tweets that may need a fact check, is I think that we are looking for information. Just tell us anything, and is it truthful? Or we kind of are lacking some leadership now, and it doesn't seem, as we get closer and closer to November, I kind of worry like we need like a big, like everyone just needs a massage or something, like just we're so pent up, and I just can't help but feel any other way.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, to this point over the last several months, things have been pretty good. Haven't really had much to complain about. And other than feeling a little cooped up at times, I've been okay and felt like things were going to work out and we were going to figure this whole thing out. And I don't know if it's just the duration and just reaching a breaking point with all that, or just the confluence of all the different disheartening events and things that I see happening on a daily basis. If that just finally got to a tipping point for me or what.
Mm-hmm.
But if things are going to continue to go as they have for the last couple of months, I just don't know how long until a lot of people start feeling that same way. And then that obviously has a lot of domino effects as a result.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because I remember seeing like reports about domestic violence when we first started lockdown, but we're worse. I guess we're not technically locked down anymore, but who knows if we may have to go back, or if people are self isolating regardless of their state opening. So that's a good point, that it just seems like it's been going on for so long, but we don't really know what's happening. I saw a CDC guidance on what offices are going to look like, and I even got an email or a note from one of my managers talking about some of the changes that may happen. And it's like, wow, it's going to be, you're going to be wearing a mask every day. You're going to have, more isolation within the office. And so, yeah, it'd be nice to have some good news. I guess the sports world is trying to do that. A lot more movement on domestic sports, talking about opening up. I know Bundesliga started last week, which is a German top flight soccer league, and the Italian top flight league, the Serie A, and the English Premier League and La Liga are all approved. They've approved a plan to return in late June. I think it's a terrible idea. I don't think that they're nearly ready, but there's been so much of a push to to get this going again. And one of the things that I found interesting in the Premier League plan, which was had more extensive reporting because it's seen as more popular, is the TV aspects of it, because that's obviously a big moneymaker, and they're making some modifications to it. It's a lot of, I guess they're just basically making it like a free for all, just to be able to make sure that people can access games. I don't necessarily know how that's going to work, and I don't know how it's going to work in the U.S. too. I don't know what NBC Sports is going to do, because they have the local, the domestic rights to the Premier League. ESPN has the rights to the FA Cup, which is another English cup that they're talking about bringing back. So we're seeing some movement overseas in Europe. And then what I was also surprised about is to see notes from you and on ESPN.com, some of the updates for the NBA and the MLB. It seems like, it's almost like a tale of two cities. I mean, there's a lot of contrast there. It doesn't. I don't know how to interpret it as much. It seems like the MLB is like imploding.
Yeah, things aren't great over there. Doesn't seem like there's a lot of tension between the owners and the players, whereas conversely, NBA, everybody seems to pretty much be on the same page, and it's more a question of, okay, exactly how are we going to accomplish this? And how many teams are going to be there? NHL has already made their plan for playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're taking 24 teams.
24, yep.
And there have been some proposals and things floated with the NBA doing something similar. Some people are pushing to just take the top 16 teams, freeze the standings as they were on the last day, go with that. Because all the 8 seeds had a multiple game lead. But then you get into other proposals, which there's one that's more of like a World Cup group play format where you take 20 or 24 teams, you kind of divvy them out. You take a couple top teams, a couple middle teams, and then a lower end team, play a series of games to help finish out the regular season and determine seeding and who gets into the playoffs and all that type of thing. So before we get too much into the pros and cons of different plans.
Yeah.
I know you're an NBA fan, but you don't maybe live and die with it as much as I do. But what would you lean towards as just a casual fan?
I don't like a format change. And the reason for that is because then we're going to have to listen to endless arguments about who would have won or who has an advantage.
I feel like we're going to get that anyway.
Well, there's going to be a change. But what I'm saying is, if I were going to lean towards something, I would lean towards freezing the regular season. And it's still going to maybe have an asterisk or whatever, but I would lean towards that. Now, again, from a casual interest point of view, yeah, maybe if they changed the format up, it'd be interesting to see how teams dealt with that. But I don't know. I guess I should say for the record that my preference is to not come back at all until we know that we can do this. But that's the NBA there's too much momentum, it seems like, for them to at least not agree on a proposal and then work out logistics. So in my eyes, I'm leaning towards freezing the regular season as it stands. Do you have one that you like more?
Yeah, I lean much more towards the kind of middle concept of, I don't think we need everybody. And I know some of those teams want to get in games for local TV deals or draft positioning, although any team at the bottom who's worried about draft positioning just wants to go lose games. And I don't think that's really going to help the product or accomplish much in the long run.
Yeah.
And it was there was a race for the 8th seed in the West. The Grizzlies had I think a 3.5 game lead, but had a tough schedule. The Pelicans, the Kings, the Spurs, and the Blazers were all within striking distance going into the last month. So it was really conceivable that if the season had played out and none of this had ever happened, that a different team would have gotten the 8th seed. Now, you can't go back and just completely relitigate everything and start from scratch. But I do like the idea, especially because I don't think you can just go straight into playoff games. These guys haven't played in months. I think 6 or 7 NBA teams still don't have access to their facilities to train and work out and shoot and work with development coaches and all that type of thing. So there is a little bit of a competitive disadvantage. So I think that it's important to have some regular season games and not just go straight to the playoffs. And another reason is just for injury prevention. I mean, we've seen it in soccer already.
Yeah.
In Bundesliga, a lot of soft tissue injuries, just the trickle down effect of guys not training, or certainly not training as hard or as often as they would under normal circumstances. So I think you need a chance, in addition to a training camp, to get guys into game shape, because you hear it all the time that game speed is totally different.
Yes. And playoff intensity too.
That too. And you can't jump even more reason to have those games, because you can't go from nothing and then dial it up to 11 Spinal Tap style. You gotta have something kind of in between to help guys find an equilibrium and get their legs and get the rhythm back. And in addition to a safety thing, I think it affects the quality of the product as well.
Yes.
If guys are coming out and either getting hurt, so that you're losing potentially key players off of teams.
Yep.
And then, I mean, guys haven't shot against NBA caliber defense in 3 months. It's going to look like some of those Last Dance playoff games that were 84-81 in overtime.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I foresee messiness.
Oh, I think that's going to be the case regardless, because I mean, there's just this is unprecedented, and there's no playbook for this. There's no precedent for anything like this.
Right. And I again, that's why I lean towards not having it, but I think I've lost that's not going to be the case. They're going to try and do something, and okay, I mean, and then of course that's their right. Again, but not just messiness from logistics, but also optics, because what you and I have talked about before on the show, and I've talked about with a good friend of mine who's a huge NBA fan as well. He kind of reinvigorated my interest in the NBA when I was living in Atlanta. And we talk about this whole idea of players potentially sacrificing health and safety to come back and put a product on the floor and on the TV screen. And I just can't help but not be able to get over that. So I'm trying to figure out, because it'd be the same thing if, if there wasn't a lockdown because of the virus. We're still asking players to risk health and safety. It's just under different circumstances. But now it seems really reckless to me. And I'm just not sure where I come out on that. It's part of why I've kind of it's been nice to be away from sports, so I can kind of figure out, how do I feel about this? And especially in these types of times where we've been inside for months. So we're just going to go right back out there. That's a question for the whole country, really, as we can see with all the reopening protests and stuff.
We all need training camp. We all need some regular season games before we get back into the postseason of life.
That's actually that's like a genius statement. Really, what we should be focusing on is not reopening everything right away and being like, hey, yeah, go back. We should have almost like a training camp, have I don't know if it's like mental health resources, or I don't even know what you would call it, but that's one of the things that I'm also like, when people talk about, the offices are open back up, and I'm like, you think I'm just going to jump back into working in an office? Forget about the work part of it, because I've been working from home, so I can do the job. I think it's to me, it's the idea of what am I allowed to do? What can I do? The first thing I think about at my office is, we're not like a touchy-feely group of people, but a lot of fist bumps, a lot of high fives, a lot of closed space meetings. That's the strength of my team, is that we're all local. And so when I have a problem, I can just go over to someone's desk and be like, hey, let me bug you for 20 minutes. Let's go grab a room. That's not going to happen, because I don't want to, people are going to feel uncomfortable and unsafe.
Well, even just using common facilities and opening the same doors, or using the bathroom, or going into the kitchen.
We have a kitchen where everybody stores the stuff in the fridge, and we have a coffee maker, and we have a tea. I mean, it's everything. And so you're right. We need to have a way to man, I don't know. I'm going to have to marinate on this, but you're right. Because the players need it, but we need it too. But the rhetoric in this country right now, it's a uh, all or nothing is what is kind of strange to me. Even phased reopening, it still feels like it's a little bit over the top. Like it still feels like, oh, we're allowed to go bowling again. That was the thing in Atlanta where like none of the Atlanta bowling alleys reopened, or only one did because they were authorized to. But all the guys that own bowling alleys like, well, this is not. How do we do this? It's just how many? We're all touching the same bowling balls, the shoes, the food. It's like so. It's all or nothing, and maybe we have to zoom out and sort of just like realize that this is going to take a while, regardless of whether we're allowed to reopen or not. Now, another thing, and I don't want to go down too far down this rabbit hole. We are starting to see cases increase in certain states. I'm like, okay, what now? And so this is another thing that we're going to have to cross. Like, what's the threshold? What's acceptable? So, but yeah, bringing it back to sports. I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to reconcile is what can we realistically ask these guys to do? It is an income.
Yeah, and I'm having some of those same qualms, and I mean, not just with sports. I mean, that's a notable, faction of it. And as much as I want as a fan to see games come back, and I think it would be great for morale for a lot of people. It would be great economically for a lot of people. But I worry about, okay, how selfish am I being in all this? And some of that creeps into just daily life stuff. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine the other day, and he asked if I'd been playing golf at all. I said, no. I mean, I feel like it's probably okay. And I know they have measures in place. In golf, you can be pretty far apart. But if you have separate carts and they're doing stuff where the ball doesn't actually go in the hole and it just like hits like a little like putting green, like raised thing and all that type of stuff. But regardless of the safety measures and impacts of it, it just doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
There's so much serious shit going on, and there's so many people hurting or that are directly impacted or indirectly impacted because they work in healthcare industry or whatever, meatpacking industry. I mean, there's so many people that are affected by this on a daily basis, and it's literally a life or death thing. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go play golf today. Right. It just doesn't feel right.
Exactly. And see, but that's a good point, is that and that's part of the whole training camp thing, is like, we need to just get okay with doing that kind of stuff. I had a couple of weeks ago, I had a real big dilemma, and I'm outing myself here a little bit, but I've become really good friends with someone who I just met. And so her and I, we talk on the phone, we text, and we're just friends. And when stuff started to reopen in Texas, she's like, hey, like, you want to come meet up? And I was like, wow, I actually have to make a decision. And so she had to convince me. And so I did eventually go out, and I'm glad I did, because I got to see what the new world looks like at the restaurant we went to. I won't say the name, doesn't matter, but it was like a restaurant / outdoor bar with, like, I had a band.
McDonald's.
Yeah, they got great live music there. So they had everybody that worked there was wearing masks and gloves. Everybody that worked there, behind the bar, serving, working the front door. At the front door, they say no parties bigger than 6. And if you want a table, you need to, we have to sign up and you have to wait. So they had this like large outdoor waiting area too. And then you would get called and I was like, okay, but it's still, I was sort of like uneasy the whole time. I don't think I've told this story on air, but that, so I'm getting better with it. But then again, at the same time, it's like, what? So I'm just going to go out like nothing's happening around. And, we just passed 100,000 deaths. We still don't really know how safe it is. And, I even am starting to see some stories where this one threw me for a loop. God, it's been such a shitty week. Like, so you have like some places that are like, okay, you're required to wear a mask. And I get that. The Chipotle that's near me, the Whole Foods, I'm like, yeah, that's not a big deal. I'll keep one in my car. Then now I'm starting to see places that they won't let you in if you have a mask.
What?
I haven't seen it personally, but I'm seeing reports about this. This is what I mean with the all or nothing. It's like, shouldn't that be, okay, the business makes a choice, and the choice should be to require or not. But now you're saying if you choose to wear one and it's not required, they're like, no, you can't come in here. So I'm like, wait, what? I'm not. I guess I need to get a bibliography going here and find out where I saw that. But
can we get Twitter to fact check, or at least Marcus? Marcus,
where
can
is
you research
Marcus?
this, please?
This intern is he's never around when you need him.
Well, social distancing.
Yeah, that's right. Way to stay safe, Marcus. No, it's 6 feet, not 6 miles. Oh, okay. Uh, so, this is what I mean with the all or nothing. It's like now it's going to become a political point. I mean, you saw Ted Cruz already jump in there with the Memorial Day celebrations. Trump was making fun of Biden for wearing a mask at the whatever ceremony he went to. And it's so strange. And like you said, when stuff like this is happening, it's like weird to be like, oh yeah, sports, or oh yeah, let's go play golf. I haven't been on the range since even 2 weeks before lockdown. I think I'd still hadn't been on the range for a while. So it does feel weird. And what I think is truly important is like self-reflection and like, okay, what are the things that I want to still participate in? But it would be also nice if we did have like rather than like celebrities, this is like maybe a little bit of too big of an ask and maybe a little bit too needy of me, but so like we have this like whole thing with celebrities trying to like stay, oh, things are normal, I'm just going to do the show from my house, or we're going to do a Zoom script read through. Okay, I'd rather just have you sort of maybe talk and like lead, because we're not really we're so divided. Like I like use your platform to, if you're going to try to, entertain me. Okay, great. Sure. But why don't you step outside of your comfort zone and use the platform you have in this really unique time. So as an example, and I'll shut up after this. One of the things that was truly surreal for me, and I may have already mentioned this, is I heard that the Queen of England gave a speech and everybody was really talking about it. And when I finally watched it, it was absolutely amazing. Like I had never seen something so timely, delivered so well by someone who you don't get to hear from very often. And she understood the impact of that. And she used it as an opportunity to deliver a message of gratitude and hope. And it was just like, whoa. Like I mean, it's to me one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard, and it wasn't more than 5 minutes. And so that's what I feel like we need right now, and not this like all or nothing with the masks and should we reopen this, or I don't know. I think people need something intentionally good, I guess. So that's my high horse on that one.
Well, there's been such a muddying of the waters of what people are expected to do, or Trump says this and then other people say, no, that's wrong. And there's just we're not all on the same page. And some of that is unavoidable because we're still finding so much out about the virus. And a perfect case in point is the people who, for whatever reason, don't want to wear masks or think it's some sort of oppression to have to wear a mask to go into a store. The go-to line is always, well, the government said don't wear masks, they don't work. And the only thing I remember about that was right when things were really getting bad and we were locking down, they were saying, hey, don't buy a mask. We need to make sure that there's a supply for people on the front lines and in healthcare and in industries that really need them versus everyday people having a mask.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I remember ever saying, don't wear a mask. You don't need a mask. It was basically, hey, just don't buy them. We'll figure this out, but we need to make sure that there's a supply on hand for the people that need them. That's the only thing I ever remember hearing. And if I'm forgetting something, then please, anyone listening to the show or Jane, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the only thing I ever remember hearing about that. And it's such a small, I don't want to say insignificant thing because it's significant, but it's a small thing to have the leader of the country and the leader of the free world for some fucking reason.
Yeah.
Not just not wear a mask, but openly refuse and be defiant and make fun of other people for wearing masks. It's like it all starts at the top. And it all
Uh-huh.
starts with setting the tone. And I mean, you've been on sports teams and worked for companies where if the person who's at the top of the food chain disrespects something or clowns it or says fuck that everybody else is going to eventually adopt that attitude for the most part.
Yep.
And look, is wearing a mask the cure all for everything? No. But is it a simple measure that can drastically reduce your risk of getting or spreading the virus? Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think having to wear a mask to go into the grocery store is a big thing. It's not a cost prohibitive measure that indirectly affects one group of people over another. It's just a simple common thing. It's like you have to wear a shirt and shoes into 7-Eleven.
Right. You
I
texted me about
don't
that.
really see it as anything different than that. And the fact that there might be places that you mentioned that won't allow you in with a mask just further adds to the stigma and muddies the waters on what people are expected to do. And if we can't figure out those basic things, then what chance do we have for some of the more fine nuance points of all this? I mean, I've even been struggling with just, and similar to the golf thing, it's like, okay, well, now that things are kind of like opening up, what's the responsible level of interaction with people?
Yes.
Because I've gone to a friend of mine's house who lives about 20 minutes away, a lifelong friend, basically a member of my family. He's essentially my little brother for all intents and purposes. And I've gone over there to see him a couple times and hang out with him and his wife. And I've sat on my side of the room and worn a mask on the way in and out and washed my hands 2 or 3 times while I'm there and no physical contact and all those types of things just to have some human interaction and see a good friend. But every time I do it, before and after, I do have this little mental calculus of, okay, is this something that I really should be doing? Is this really okay? What's the line of, I need to do this for my mental and spiritual health versus my actual physical health?
Yeah.
And it's kind of an unanswerable question for the most part. And I guess it's sort of up to each individual with the risk that they're comfortable with or what people in their house they may risk spreading it to. Obviously, if you're a single person, hold up in your apartment by yourself, I think it's pretty essential. But if you have a family or younger, older family members that may have some immunodeficiencies, then it's a whole different ballgame. So
Yep.
it's just a tough thing to figure out, and I think we're all struggling with it. And as we talked about earlier in the show, it's just it kind of all stacks on top of each other, and all these different things happening at one time have been difficult for people to kind of suss out and figure out what they should do or shouldn't do.
Yeah, yeah, and so wanted to follow up on what you mentioned about the masks and the confusion there. Part of the confusion was because immediately that they said that we might think about recommending masks, but don't buy medical masks or use a face covering. I remember the press conference exactly because Trump was basically saying, yeah, they're saying that masks may be effective and you can wear them, people should wear them, but I'm not going to wear one. And it's like, okay, well, now we're back to square one. So they may work, but you're not going to. And so you're right to be confused, and people are right to be confused because, like you said, it starts at the top, and we've just keep getting mixed messages, and now it's even getting. Now it's like we're not even really talking about coronavirus anymore. Now we want to, shut down Twitter and this and that. One more thing I will note about coronavirus I thought was interesting that I kind of shows you how we're all in our own bubbles. I was talking to a friend of mine over the weekend. It feels like it's Thursday, but it feels like it's Monday. It feels like it was just yesterday. And she's a good friend of mine in the DC area. So we're catching up, and she was talking about some of the things that are going on in the DC area where I didn't realize this because I've been living in Texas where things are essentially just everything's open now. And she said that they're enforcing social distancing on the streets with the National Guard and the police, that they're still in this state of lockdown. And I was like, wow, really? Because you should see what it's like in Texas. In Texas, it's like everything's just wide open. So I had no idea that there was still this, uh, you know, people are still in a legislative way or an administrative way enforcing that. And I was like, wow, that's a surprise to me.
And then you see stuff like over the weekend in Ocean City, Maryland, and
Oh my
there's just people
gosh.
everywhere and places in Texas. And
Yep.
I mean, the whole thing about all this, and I mentioned it as far as my own thought process. it really has kind of exposed how selfish we all are.
That's right. You mentioned that in the rundown.
Because it's
Yeah.
all about, well, this is what I want, or this doesn't affect me. But every action you take in general, but especially in a time like this, has ripple effects and it impacts other people.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be perfectly fine, and whether you have the virus or not, you could help impact someone else coming down with it, whether you're an asymptomatic carrier or just your presence forces someone closer to another person that does have it. Like there's all these little sliding doors and butterfly effect type things going on with people going out that you just don't know what the results are going to be. And I think an abundance of caution is important. I mean, we can't stop living lives. We can't just sit in our house for the next 2 years. Like I'm not on that end of the spectrum, but to your point about, well, I guess our collective point about finding like a training camp for reintroducing to life. Like I don't know what the answer is or if there is an answer, because doing the high school AB schedule where, all right, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, everything's open, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, stay home. I mean,
There's a great example.
That doesn't solve it, but
Right.
It's at least a concept or a thought of a way to try to get people a release, allow people to access whatever it is that they need, whether it's for entertainment or whether it's to go see a friend or just to be outside or to go somewhere, do something fun for their own mental health or physical health. But we have to find that sweet spot of allowing people to live, but not putting the greater population in further jeopardy. And it's a tough needle to thread. I admit that, but it seems like our public discourse has been very black and white rather than the shades of gray that it needs to be.
Yeah, it's scary. There's no way I don't. It doesn't seem like we're getting any more closer uh, to getting clarity.
Yeah, it seems like we're even further away.
Exactly.
It seemed like everybody was much more on the same page 2 months ago than they are right now.
Oh gosh, exactly.
Which was somewhat predictable, but it's still frustrating and disheartening to see.
It's yeah, no bueno, and it's an election year, and it's just yeah. So we sort of derailed the sports segment of the show there a little bit, but I
We can
guess
make a hard right turn back into the NBA playoffs if you want to. I'm not opposed.
oh yeah, I mean, well, I think that we had sidetracked into talking about the obligation that players should or shouldn't feel to come back and play, and then like how that makes us both feel. But it looks like the NBA is they're moving forward with it. I guess I can't really say the same with the Major League Baseball, which again you talked about it last week, how it's a little bit more straightforward for them because of the fact that they haven't started yet. But what I'm starting to see now, and again, on browsing the web and looking at some of your notes, is that the idea that the financial ramifications are starting to get for minor league players, especially, seem to be getting pretty intense. Which is something that I'd been hearing about for a few weeks. That they were going to come to an agreement, but it looks like right now we're really it's trending in the red, to use a development term.
It doesn't look great for there being a Major League Baseball season. And for the uninitiated or people who are just a little behind, I'll just try to hit the high points here. But in late March, the league and the Players Association agreed to a prorated reduction of salaries. So if they played 90 games instead of 162, then there would be that percentage of salaries paid out. And so it seems like they're shooting for about an 80 or 82 game season, just to sort of have a sprint through the summer and into the fall. And now the league is coming back and wanting players to take less. And they're saying 40% of their revenue comes from fans in the stands, which isn't going to happen. It's a complex financial issue, obviously, and I don't want to gloss over that and act like it's some easy fix and we have the answers and they just don't see it. But it is a little frustrating to see the public reaction, again, somewhat predictable, and we've talked about this on the program before, of any time there's any sort of labor disagreement, people cape up for billionaires like I never thought I would see. And I know there's some fandom aspects to that, and people might not be thinking rationally, and they just want to see their team play. And when the owner says, "Yeah, we want to play, and this is what we're going to do," and then the players say no, then they become the bad guys.
Yeah.
But they're the ones taking all the risk physically.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some finer economic details, and there's some good material out there to read further on that. And I don't want to get too much into the minutia, but sometimes the owners claim a certain state of financial affairs when the reality might be a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if they've taken out big loans for stadium renovations or buying the team or all those sorts of things, and then they're putting profits directly to pay off those personal debts, then they claim, "Oh, well, we didn't make any money last year." It's like, well, you did, but you just spent it on other things.
Mm-hmm.
And the players aren't reaping the benefits of that. And it's a complicated thing. And I don't want to demonize either side, but I do hate the fact that anytime there's a disagreement and players are kind of standing up saying, "Hey, look, we're taking the risk. We're already playing for a reduced salary that we agreed to. Now you're coming back asking to take more out. What's the point?" And that sort of gets to the larger question. What expectation should we have of these guys to put their lives in jeopardy, their families in jeopardy, potentially their careers in jeopardy,
Mm-hmm.
just so we have some games to watch and things to talk about so that we can get away from all the daily life bullshit? What to you is your expectation as a fan for these guys?
Right, and I think that's the reason why everybody needs to zoom out. And what we've been trying to do, what we talked about in the last segment in our personal lives, and just say, look, this is a pretty unprecedented time. So there's going to be things that are different, and that may not be, sunshine and roses, which might mean not having a season or an abbreviated one, or waiting longer to start to make sure that it's safe for the players. What does that even look like? We don't know. We don't know what putting, all these guys on a baseball diamond is going to mean for their safety. I guess you can do testing every day. I know one of the things that
I don't think you can even do it that often. I mean, think about how many tests that is.
Exactly.
Again, to your point of the optics, like we're already having trouble getting enough tests for everybody in general anyway.
Yes.
And then now we need to plunge hundreds of thousands into sports so that we can watch baseball games on TV.
But that's the thing, and that's why that's why I'm so confused with the NBA, because I'm like, what is your plan here? You can't just say we really want to do it and then it happens. I mean, you need that attitude, but you also have to be realistic. I mean, the speed at which they shut down the league was so amazing and abrupt that it signaled like how serious it was. And now we're just like, well, okay, 100,000 people have died, and some cases are still rising, and not everybody has access to their facilities, and like let's get back out there and play. And it's like, what?
I think that's a little unfair. I have some reservations, just as you do, as we've talked about here multiple times. But I do think the NBA has been smart and been careful about their planning on this.
Okay.
There's been a lot of, not to, use a pun, but a lot of temperature taking for a lot of different people on what do you want? What's the expectation? Where's everybody's head at?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is just my pro NBA bias coming through,
mm-hmm.
but I think Adam Silver's done a really good job of navigating this in a peaceful way between the teams and the players,
mm-hmm.
and keeping everybody's health risks in mind and the optics in mind and all these different things. And, we've heard countless different proposals of bubble sites and campuses and getting everybody in and making sure everybody's okay in these strict protocols. I mean, I was reading an article earlier today about the practice facilities reopening, and it was a lot about the Blazers and Dame Lillard and those guys, and just detailing what they have to go through. And I thought that Lillard made an interesting point where the first couple of days being back was awesome. It was great to be back on the court. It was great to be there, even though you couldn't really hang out with the guys, and it was a different vibe. it was great just to be back, doing what he loves to do, getting ready to start back, having something to look forward to and something to strive for. And then he said that second week, the feeling shifted more towards, okay, what are we doing here? This is weird. This is odd. The newness had kind of worn off, and the reality of all the different procedures was kicking in. And they're talking about they're going through a different entrance.
Yep.
Scheduled times. You can only have like 4 players were there at a time, each on their own individual half of the court, working with the coach, wearing gloves and a mask. Couldn't have any contact. Couldn't use the shower. Couldn't use the ice tubs or any of the medical facilities. Couldn't go to the cafeteria. You basically come in. You put all your stuff in a bag. You have gear and 2 basketballs and a towel and some water waiting for you. You do your thing, and then you walk out a different entrance so that you don't pass the other guys, and you go home. And they're even enforcing players parking with the spot in between them in the parking lot, so there's not that inclination to run into someone and say, hey, and chat, and all of a sudden you're, without even realizing it, you're 3 feet away from somebody and you're talking. So I think a similar thing might happen when the NBA does come back, where at first it's going to be like, this is great. This is unbelievable. We're having these great games. Everybody's watching. They're doing monster ratings. Everybody feels good. And then let's say a week later, things on a general, public scale take a spike in the number of cases or the number of deaths. And then it's going to be, okay, what the hell are we doing here? And it's a tough tightrope to walk. And there are benefits to coming back, and there are downsides, and there are benefits to staying away just as there are downsides. And it's a tough thing. And it's hard to find a solution either way that's really going to make everybody happy or everybody feel good. But I do feel like at least they're being smart about how they're proceeding and how they're trying to figure this out, and taking an approach that really puts player health first and foremost. And we've heard far more conversation about how they were going to actually do this versus talk of, okay, what's the schedule going to look like? What are the seeds going to be? Or what's the financial compensation going to be? So it does seem like priorities on the NBA are in the right place. And I feel good about them staying there. And if there are health issues or there are concerns, that they're going to be ready to address those.
Richard Bruce Woj Abernathy with the breakdown on the NBA logistics.
That was a Woj firecracker. No Woj bombs here.
No, I think I appreciate that insight. And yeah, you are correct about Silver. He's really maintained a good stance. He's not over-promising, but he's definitely not being draconian. He has a job to do. And I like that aspect. And again, it's that sort of steady hand that is really, I think, made the NBA it's made the NBA a blockbuster league even more so than it was when he took over. And the relationship with the players and the teams and the media. And I think it's really, he's certainly, is in his element. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll keep you posted here on the show.
Yeah, to me, one of the interesting things to keep an eye on is the fan reaction to whatever happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, we hear it all the time from professional athletes of, we thank the fan, none of this is possible without the fans. You guys pay the salaries. We feel an obligation, we want to go out there and fight for y'all, win for y'all, all that type of stuff. In this scenario, they don't owe me shit.
Yeah.
And as much as I would like to see them come back and play, if a bunch of NBA players stood up and said, look, I know we've spent all this time on these plans and we tried to figure it out. I just don't feel safe doing this, or I don't feel right doing this.
Mm-hmm.
If any player doesn't want to come back and participate, I have no problem with them.
Yeah.
And if the league in general, if there's enough of a consensus that guys don't want to do it, which certainly doesn't seem to be the case.
Right.
But if things were to shift for whatever reason and that were to be the case, I wouldn't be mad at anybody. Like, this is a really serious thing, and they're out there in very close proximity to a lot of different people.
Yes.
Expected to put their bodies on the line. I mean, it's a different situation, but they already put their bodies on the line anyway. And there's guys that suffer horrific injuries that impact their life just from playing basketball under normal health circumstances. So to do it in this time and with all these uncertainties and all these different things, as much as I would like to see it, and I saw Mark Stein wrote a similar thing the other day, where it's as much as I would like to see it back, the closer it gets, the more I worry about whether we're doing the right thing here. And I have those concerns, and I just hope that people, and this is probably a pipe dream for people to be rational and think about this in such a way.
Yeah.
But, you look at it with I know some of the baseball guys have been talked about. I think Mike Trout talked about it. He's got a pregnant wife and is expecting his first child. And he's if I either have to be completely quarantined and separated from my family for months while my child is born, I don't want to do that. If I'm put in a situation where I could contract the virus and take it home to my newborn child and wife, I don't want that either.
Right.
And there's just so many different considerations that we need to have for these guys. And I feel like too much of the emphasis has been on can they rather than should they. Like the old Jeff Goldblum line from Jurassic Park, where he's like, you're just slapping the label on a lunchbox and you're selling it and you're selling it and you're selling it. And you spent all this time thinking about whether you could, and you didn't stop to think whether or not you should.
Yeah.
And I do feel, to reiterate the point, I do feel like that has at least been part of the discussion here from the league. Not that other leagues haven't, but it has felt a little more front and center of being understanding. And I know Dame Lillard took some heat earlier in the week for basically saying, hey, if we're just coming back to play meaningless games, I'm not doing that.
I saw that quote. Yeah.
If I have a chance to come make the playoffs, I'm there 110%. Let's do this. And that all seems really reasonable to me. And yeah, if it were 2017 and it was towards the end of the season, he was coming back from an injury, he said, I don't want to play these games. Yeah, that's a totally different set of circumstances. But this is unprecedented on so many levels. And I think we need to adapt how we think and not just do those typical knee-jerk talking head fan reactions that people have where they boil down their character and personality into one instance in one moment and consider them selfish or say they're not a team player, they're not a competitor, all those sorts of things that we tend to bandy about. And I just hope that the general public at large is considerate and understanding if some guys don't participate.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see that reaction because, not to take it back to the political stuff, but we already saw, what a simple protest at the national anthem can spark in people. Imagine someone saying, well, I'm not coming back because I don't feel safe. And then they become a pariah maybe, so yep. I didn't even think about that aspect as some guys are going to, players, male or female, and staff even are going to start saying, well, actually, not worth the risk for me at this present moment.
Yeah. To me, the only obligation any of these guys have are to their teammates and organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody says they don't want to play for whatever reason, as long as their teammates are cool with it, I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
And even if the teammates aren't cool with it, I'm still probably cool with it.
Right.
I just think it's such a case-by-case basis for this because there are so many determining factors. I mean, if your wife has an autoimmune disorder or you're taking care of a parent and maybe, especially for some of these younger guys in the league, some of their parents live with them or live,
yep.
Right down the street. And so if they're in contact with older family members that maybe don't have great health, that's just such a unique set of circumstances for everybody. So it's a tough thing, and I want to see games, but I don't want it to come at the expense of everyone's health.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll keep you posted here on the program of the developments in the various leagues. I was shocked to see the Premier League get approval for the 17th. And
I was too, because I'd heard some rumblings that they were just going to shut it down. And that was sort of a foregone conclusion, I thought, was what I'd heard a couple of weeks ago.
That's what I was banking on. And I really wanted that to happen because I didn't want Liverpool to get a title, but they're so far ahead that if they come back, they're not mathematically cleared yet, but they're essentially there. So, but that's just
what would be a great flex?
What's that?
Is if Liverpool said, you guys can come back, we're not playing, we'll forfeit.
Oh, gosh.
And win anyway. How freaking great would that be?
Oh, man. But then that's another thing. Are some teams going to actually, maybe some teams will be like, we don't want to come back. I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm sure that's going to be a stretch, but maybe. Oh gosh. And then I mean, again, it's so funny to be talking about this because there's still so many other things in just regular life outside of entertainment that we have to figure out that we don't know about yet. And it's kind of been the running theme of this episode.
Well, let me give you a silver lining.
Okay.
Let's stick to the show Creed here for a second.
Yes, yes, yes.
Let me make the case for why sports coming back is a good thing.
Okay.
We could actually learn how to reopen some different places based on how they're able to pull this off with the leagues. And not that I want them to be guinea pigs in this situation, but we do have a chance to test some practices and figure out a testing regimen or a distancing regimen or whatever it may be to find a way to get some of these larger scale businesses or businesses with closer contact and maybe figure out a little more about what works and what doesn't work or what is too onerous and what isn't really a big deal. So that to me is a potential silver lining in all of it, is that we will learn a little bit more about how to handle this. Now, unfortunately, many of the businesses that could use that information are open months before these games are going to happen. So it might be a moot point. But I do think that there is potentially something to be gained from all of this. And the other interesting thing to watch is how these different sports impact each other and how those experiences and how things go. Let's say NBA comes back and it's a disaster. Does that shape how Major League Baseball looks at things? Or if the NHL comes back first, does that shape how the NBA looks at things? So I do think that there is a way to learn from this on a larger scale. And it's a byproduct of the whole thing, but hopefully it is at least something positive that we can get out of it if it works or even if it doesn't.
I like it. See, this guy's an innovator. This guy knows what he's talking about over here. So we need an Abernathy presidency.
You know what? I wasn't going to run, but I think you might be talking me into it. I'm starting to come around.
I think we need it now more than ever.
I need a good VP, though. Do you think Marcus is available?
Well, if you can find him. I've been looking for months. These Fig Newtons aren't going to fetch themselves. So I don't know where this guy is. So I wanted to jump into Stream Team because I really wanted to get your take. You finished Dave.
I did.
What is your take on that? I
loved it. Yeah. I was so sad when it was over.
Dude, right? And
it ends a little cliffhangery.
Yes.
And I just loved, I watched it in about 2 days, 3 days.
Yeah.
I did a couple runs of 3 or 4 episodes each. And it was only 10 total.
Yeah.
And my thoughts haven't really changed from what we talked about last week, but having seen the whole story arc now and seeing some of the different subject matter that they get into, it just further cements my initial reaction after the first couple of episodes. They really do touch on some intense personal plot lines.
Yes.
That I know for sure the Gata storyline is straight out of his life.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that a lot of the stuff about Dave Bird is at least loosely based on things that have actually happened to him on the come up. And I just love those personal types of storytelling. And it feels honest. It feels authentic, but it was still funny. It was still ridiculous at times. There was, the party at Bieber's house, that whole conundrum of like, well, I didn't bring my girlfriend because I didn't want to assume that I could bring somebody. And just like these funny little, Seinfeldish
exactly
things.
Yeah.
But then there's also some real heavy emotional stuff and some real serious life things that they get into and talk about. And I loved the show. And even if you're not a big hip hop fan or don't really know about Lil Dicky, I highly recommend anyone watching it just because it's a very intense and personal storytelling experience and something that I got a lot out of.
Yeah, I know that he's a pariah now, but the vibes that I got from it were from a particular season or set of episodes from Louis on FX, same network, where Louis is in the running to get the Tonight Show. and they do it over like 2 or 3 longer episodes. And I remember when I watched it at the time, this was like 2015. No, even earlier. I don't know when they actually came out, but I was watching it like 2013, 2014. I was still in DC. And I remember never seeing something that felt so, like you said, it's like extremely personal. And like, I don't know if Louis ever been in the running for the Tonight Show, but the way he told the story and the characters and like even bringing in the daughters were like really like very like well directed um, in those episodes. And it was just like, it was amazing. And I hadn't seen anything like that that dealt with the entertainment industry with such honesty in a while. I guess it's because it's risky. So like, you know, the typical thing is you kind of have a sort of persona and you double down on. That's what Amy Schumer did with her show, which I liked her show at first, but then it just started to get old where I was like, oh, you're just kind of doing Amy Schumer stuff. Like you don't really get into anything. It's not even a show. It's a sketch show. Um, and I think Amy Schumer would probably have really interesting things to say about her experience in comedy uh, during the time that she came up, and also some of the controversy she's been through. But again, she's doing fine, I'm sure. So yeah, I'm glad you watched. I'm glad you liked it.
He's really self-aware too.
Yeah, and that's the part that I've always liked about his music. But it's interesting to be able to do that in a sitcom type format and not be preachy. And I think that that's also a really big testament, obviously, to the writing, but the casting too. Like normally, like on some shows, like there's always someone you're like, oh, I don't want to have a scene with this guy again. There's a sci-fi show on Amazon Prime called The Expanse, which I really like. I'd heard about it for a while, and there's
you've talked about it on this show, I think.
Oh man, it's so good. I went through like I think 4 seasons in like maybe a weekend. I remember I was like really stressed at work, so I was like, weekends here? Nope, not moving. And there's a whole subset of characters. You can call them a race, right? Because it's like a space type of show, sci-fi. There's a whole subset of characters that completely I could not stand. Like I didn't like their storyline. I guess the casting was fine, but so that's not with Dave. Like everybody really fits in well.
Well, they did a whole bottle episode that he wasn't even really in.
Yes. Oh man. And like even like this is another thing. Like I remember this with Entourage. It started to kind of get on my nerves. Like celebrity cameos. Like at first it's like, oh my God, that's like so and so. And then in Entourage, they just started going over the top with it. And I was just like, okay, we get it.
It's like The Simpsons. It's just a cameo to have a cameo, and to promote the show is the only reason that they're there.
Right.
And I think where you're going with this is the cameos here felt important to the plot.
Yeah, they got buy-in from the people that were doing cameos. Like Trippie Redd is sort of like a big time, like kind of like the new era of rappers. I would say like these are guys that I'm relatively new to, but like he like really was like in his element. Like I was like, damn, I didn't know Trippie Redd could act. You know, like he was, and like the stuff was central to the show because that his producer friend is trying to do sound engineering for these guys, and it's like. And like, see, sometimes I don't like shows like this because if it's something that I have a little bit of interest in, like music production, or like I could never watch a show like the same concept, but like DJing, I would just be so irritated. But but that was one of the reasons why I stayed away from Dave. But then like my friend kind of forced me to watch. I was like, all right, they're not like, it's not like nerding out on rap and hip hop life. It's just a personal story about making it. So it's an American dream story. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's commenting more on his journey than the music industry as a whole. It doesn't get preachy.
Yeah.
And he is a little self-deprecating, not just on some of the physical stuff, but I think even in the way he plays his character, the exaggerated version of himself.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm the next Kanye. I'm doing all this inventive shit that nobody's ever seen before, and I'm going to change music. And I feel like that was included in there as a way of saying, I had to adjust and figure out how to handle this and how to walk that line between being confident and believing in myself and being, a little bit of a prick about it.
Yeah.
At least that's my inference, because it did seem like he was kind of self-aware, and he has a couple moments of existential crisis about his career and his character and why he's doing it and what he wants to do and what his message needs to be and all these types of things. And it does, to me, show sort of his process of figuring out how he wanted to handle his career and the type
Mm-hmm.
of musician and person that he wanted to be in regards to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. And then they got renewed for season 2, so I can't wait for that.
In
Um,
2023.
yeah, I know, right? Like, when are you going to be able to even? That's another thing. Like, yeah, we're not going to see movies, new movies. One of the things I've been paying attention to is so I think I may have mentioned the show, but the best part of going to see the Rise of Skywalker in IMAX was that they played a 6-minute prologue for the movie Tenet, which is the new Christopher Nolan movie.
Oh, I'm so excited for that.
Dude, have you seen the prologue? It's I've never been so excited for a movie in quite some time. I mean, I wasn't even this excited about The Force Awakens, and so I haven't. And then that new trailer came out, I think a couple of days ago. This is really good. But the big controversy is, like, Nolan has already said, like, we're not doing video on demand. This is going to go to a theater, because that's his whole thing is IMAX. He shoots in IMAX. So everyone's like the subreddit is like, kind of like going back and forth about it, but
Are they going to hold the movie, or are they sticking to their release date?
Their official paper or stuff that's been coming out, like from their Twitter and whatnot, and their website is saying July 17th, which I believe is actually the date that was originally the original date. So I don't know. I don't even know what the state of movie theaters is now, or because not as
They're
many
all
people.
closed.
Not as many people are going to
drive-ins.
Oh, right.
And I've seen some things about different facilities converting into drive-in movie theaters. I think I might have seen something about like a AA stadium or something. Well, I know the one in Pensacola that Bubba Watson's a part owner of, the Blue Wahoos. They've listed their stadium on like Airbnb, and you can rent out the stadium and have access to it.
Yo, how much is that? That's crazy.
I think it was like $2,400 a night, which I honestly thought would be more.
Yeah, hell yeah.
But you have access to the locker room, the field. I mean, it certainly brings up some health concerns.
Yeah.
It's not like cleaning a 2-bedroom apartment for you to stay at in an Airbnb. It's a 30,000 square foot facility or whatever. But
yeah.
I mean, I understand why Nolan might want his movie out in a theater versus on demand, but I don't know how that's going to go for them.
Exactly, because you can't go to the movies, and then even if movie theaters started opening, you can't put as many people in there. You're not going to make as much money, and I'm already starting to see some major film companies, to the chagrin of AMC Cinemas, they're just basically saying like, "Oh, we're just going to put on demand," because they just want to get these products out, and so it could potentially change the consumption of media, which has already seen a sort of a watershed moment with people being locked at home. And but yeah.
I just hope he doesn't go full Inception on Trump and convince him that it's his idea to reopen all the movie theaters on July 16th.
Jesus. That's going to be the next battleground, though, is especially if sports gain momentum, is he's going to start saying like, well, he already went on his, he made a statement that now houses of worship he considers them essential, so they need to be mandated to be open. And I'm like, wow. So like, you're just going to inject yourself into this, and then we're going to say he's going to do the same thing with movie theaters, or maybe he'll even get involved in the sports discussion. Gosh. Anyway.
Well, regardless, this podcast will remain open.
We are,
while maintaining proper social distancing.
Yes, even with our intern, too much social distancing. He's just completely gone. But taking it back to Stream Team, I do have an update on Rick and Morty. I watched the latest episode. It was fine.
Is that the camping one?
Yeah. Yes.
I've seen that. That's the only one I've gotten a chance to see.
And I liked it.
I loved it.
It was the Rick and Morty episode. They weren't, I don't know if because the other episodes I've watched, I was like, yo, what is going on for the second half of the season? So I've got a little bit of renewed faith. My reality shows are really, I got a lot of housewives to catch up on, but 90 Day Fiance is still scratching me right where I itch. As we talked about in the green room, I do want to start getting back into movies. I haven't seen Joker. You recommend it, so I'll have to make an executive decision on that.
It's a tough watch in parts, and I certainly see why there was some I don't want to say controversy. There's some dialogue about the pros and cons of such a movie,
Yeah.
especially as it relates to mental health and those types of things. But I think it's a good movie to at least see once.
Okay.
And I mean, it was really well done. Obviously, great performance from Joaquin Phoenix. I mean, he won an Academy Award for it, but definitely worth your 2+ hours.
Okay.
And I think it's okay to watch it and enjoy it, but maybe still have a few minor issues with it.
Okay.
But it is a little prescient, even though it's, a year old.
Yeah. And what's on the agenda in the Abernathy family theater?
I need to watch Uncut Gems.
I heard it was great.
I heard the same. I've heard a little bit of mixed. I mean, I've heard overwhelmingly positive things with a few caveats of it was really good, but some of the gambling stuff was kind of dumb and, sort of implying that, it was a little unrealistic, but it is a movie. So, I mean, some of that comes with the territory, but I am excited to see it and just hear KG curse for 2 hours. I mean, that's as close as we have to NBA basketball right now.
Oh, there
Is
you
just
go.
watching KG be intense and some fake basketball scenes. But Uncut Gems is high on my list. And another set of movies that is on Netflix,
Okay.
not to make this a Netflix promo, even though I've seen them too many times to count. The Back to the Future trilogy is on Netflix again.
Oh, wow.
And I watched the first one the other night. And I'm going to watch number 2 at some point over the weekend, or at least that's what I'm hoping to do. And the third one, I might just skip it. But
Right.
the first one is great. The second one has its moments, and is certainly a little more interesting from a nerd out time travel debate perspective.
Okay.
So maybe we can. We don't have to do it next week, but I would like for both of us to watch Back to the Future Part 2 and maybe have a little time travel sidebar mini discussion on the show at some point, because
Yeah.
it's such an intriguing and interesting thing to me. And when I think about if time travel were real and what the possibilities were, that's the first movie that comes to mind about what the potential pitfalls are or the
Yeah.
benefits. And I would love to have that sports almanac, but
Right. They did such a good job with that. Like I remember, because we watched those movies as kids, and it was like complex enough to be interesting, but you could still gather it, right? Like it was really original. Like that's just incredible filmmaking, and it's still really funny, but it's got like a soft side to it too. And yeah, I'd forgotten about Back to the Future 1. Like that's another one of those movies. Yeah, like I think I've seen it so many times. It's like it's just a part of my memory, like you just like we had a group of friends that were basically our cousins in another part of Massachusetts. So we would just get dropped off there for the weekend because they had a huge house. And this was before my little brother was born. So just my sister and I. So we would always watch Batman, the original Batman, the Tim Burton one, Back to the Future, and Coming to America. We just watched those movies all weekend. Every single time we were over there. It didn't matter. Like we just watch them. We didn't watch anything else. We didn't watch sports. It was 4 of us, 3 boys and my sister, and we would just watch those movies. Like, so it's so funny. Like so when Coming to America comes on over the holidays, like some movies are like, oh, I want to start from the beginning. Like Coming to America, it's like I already know exactly where I am the second it comes on. I'm like, all right, I'm good. I'm caught up. I know all the dialogue. Like, you can just jump into it.
did they shot the sequel, Coming to America sequel? Because I heard that was a go, but I didn't know what stage of production
Yeah,
or development they were in.
it was tentatively greenlit, but I had not seen anything about even casting beyond Eddie Murphy. I don't know what they're going to do now, because like it's just, but that would be something fun. Gosh,
I just did some half-assed internet research.
yeah.
Here's who it's scheduled to be released on December 18th of this year.
Oh, so they have shot it.
Yep. The film stars Eddie Murphy, Arsenio Hall, Jermaine Fowler, Leslie Jones.
Oh wow,
John Amos is back.
nice.
Tracy Morgan, Wesley Snipes,
Holy cow.
and James Earl Jones.
I was gonna say you got to bring him back. He's got to be back.
Got to.
Oh
The
my
King of
gosh,
Zamunda.
my son works. So great.
It's just an incredible movie. And
Yeah.
I think my favorite line from that movie, and I say it in different situations to my friends all the time, was when he grabs the money from Semi and he has it in the paper bag and he just throws it to the two homeless guys on the street.
Uh-huh.
And it's the Duke brothers from Trading Places.
Yeah.
Randolph, we're back.
That's so good. God, the 80s, man.
Eddie Murphy, man, that guy, just
Unbelievable.
a great run. He had a few. He was a little up and down, and then it kind of tailed off once you got to the mid '90s. But
Yeah.
just a murderer's row in the '80s.
Yeah.
And I always think of him as a stand up and a comedian on SNL first, just because that was really my first introduction to him, was listening to Eddie Murphy Raw at way too young an age.
Yeah.
But he was. It's rare for a comedic actor to be the biggest movie star in the world.
Right. He was
which
huge,
is really, man. I mean, if he wasn't the guy, he was right there on that short list in the late
Yeah.
80s. And it was just hit after hit, classic after classic. And they're all so rewatchable. I rewatched 48 Hours a month or so ago.
Dude, that movie is awesome. Dude, that movie
it's got some troubling stuff in it in hindsight.
Yeah.
Much like Eddie's comedy routine does. But and that's a separate discussion we can maybe have another time about sort of litigating movies from 35 years ago. And
right.
I mean, I think at a certain point, acknowledging that, hey, we did this, or we touched on this, or we used this word, or we expressed these beliefs, and admitting that those were wrong and you can grow and change is okay. And I don't think you have to just write off movies or cancel them. I think you can accept them for what they are and acknowledge the troublesome parts, but that's a larger discussion.
Yeah. That's something I always think about with 48 Hours. Because now the one thing I will say, maybe it's controversial, and like I said, we can get back to it another time, but it was in service of the story and demonstrating the racial conflict between the characters, but also in the world at that point. And so I found that to be, while it was alarming to hear Nick Nolte talk like that, I was like, oh, whoa. It was.
It's one thing when it's done with a narrative purpose,
yes,
or addressing a larger issue versus just we're just going to use that word, or we're just going to make those jokes.
But the characters coming together over those differences was really like so well done, and they do it like very gradually, and there's like real vulnerability there, and it's like I'm like this is awesome. I didn't see it for a long time. It never was on my radar. I within the past 10 years that I saw it, and it's fantastic. Oh man, but I need to. I think I might do that. I might just start rewatching stuff that I like, because I mean, it's not like there's anything new coming out in the movie tip. And I think I still have a Netflix account. I don't know.
If not, I know a guy.
Oh, you could.
Definitely not me, but I know a guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Actually, I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day, and we were catching up. We hadn't talked in a little while. And he admitted to me, and he had mentioned it before, and I just assumed that he had remedied the situation. But he said, I have never had a Netflix account. I've never signed up for one. He said, in fact, they were running like a free 30-day thing, like they are a lot of the time, but especially right when all the stay-at-home stuff started happening. And he said he started filling it out and just stopped for whatever reason and never went back and finished. And I jokingly told him he's the only person in America without a Netflix account, or at least a Netflix password, because those aren't necessarily the same thing.
Yeah. I was talking with someone the other day who isn't on Facebook. And I was like, wow, even though I
wish I wasn't.
Right. Like, even though I don't really use it very often.
I don't either. But I haven't. I've hovered over that delete account button a couple times, but I've never actually pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I think I did that for like a semester or something, but I don't know. It's just, but it is kind of, I don't think I've ever met anybody who like doesn't have access to like, Netflix. It just seems like everybody has Netflix or has access to it. Like, oh man.
It was wild.
We've been teasing this idea on the show a lot the past couple weeks because we're getting into a rhythm here. A long time ago, we had our fast food draft. We had some guests on my former roommates from the DC area. So the idea has been bandied about bringing it back. We do have a little bit of a different take on it because in the past we were drafting. We established a draft order of fast food items, and we kind of treat it like a traditional draft where you just pick in your favorites and what you want to build a team with. So sticking with that, as aspiring fast food GMs, we're actually going to take it a step further.
I'm going to eat my way to the top, James.
Which is building the ultimate fast food tray. This is going to be very challenging. But we'll close the show with this because here's here's the spots you have to fill in the draft. Okay. We've got an appetizer or like a small, item, value menu type item. There's an entree, there's a side, there's a dessert. I actually already kind of have. I'm actually not too torn here. I'm not too torn.
Well, you won the coin toss and you got the first pick.
Okay, so should I just go through? We each get one pick of each thing back and forth.
Yeah, well, we'll snake it though.
Okay, so I only get one at first.
Yeah.
All right, I'm opening up my notes here. Draft results. All right, I'm gonna go with my appetizer item. Okay.
Now you don't have to go in that order.
Oh, I don't?
You can prioritize however you want to build your team. Listen, if you want to take a guard first and an appetizer, great. If you want to go big man and get your entree taken care of, you can do that too.
All right. Then I know exactly. There's only one place to go. Okay, I'm going to open up with my first pick. As a side, I am going with a picnic size Bojangles fries, extra seasoning from the University of North Carolina.
In mock drafts, there was a definite, a high pick, definitely a lottery pick. But I think Chad Ford had them at 5th on their big board. But I can't fault the pick. That's a great selection, James.
Thank you. I'm very proud of that. We've got really great scouting staff. Even though I haven't had Bojangles in, oh my gosh, we could be talking about into the year territory here.
I'll mail you some. It'll stay fresh.
Yeah. It's weird that we don't have Bojangles in Texas. Anyway, okay, you've got 2 picks.
Yeah, we had spent some time scouting the Bojangles fries and really thought that they would be an asset to our organization. But with them off the board, we're going to have to go a little bit of a different direction. We're going to go ahead and get the heart and soul of our team locked away so that we can relax and rest easy knowing that we've got a game changer. For the entree, we're going In-N-Out double animal style.
Gosh.
And we're going to pair him with the sidekick, the Pippin to his Jordan, if you will. Because let's be honest, the In-N-Out burger has been playing on some bad fry teams for a while.
Yeah.
So we're going to get some Cajun Five Guys fries to pair with that delicious In-N-Out burger.
Oh my God. I can't believe we overlooked Five Guys. I'm an idiot.
What we?
I'm talking about my organization.
Oh, yeah. You guys definitely didn't do your scouting. I mean, that's just an incredible 1-2 punch. It's Pippen and Jordan.
Yes.
It's Westbrook and Durant. The one weakness of In-N-Out for me has always been the fries. And
they're terrible.
There are some truthers that would argue with that. And if you feel that way, please hit us up at the Word Podcast on Twitter and tell me why I'm wrong. But the Cajun fries, both in quality and especially quantity.
Ooh, you get your money's worth.
You absolutely do. I mean, and the fact that we're going to have those fries on a rookie contract for 5 years, I mean, get out of here.
A lot of potential. Jay Billis loves that pick. Okay,
the wingspan of the fries is enormous.
He is just miles long.
And the second jump ability of the Cajun fries, it's like you think they're done and you're like, oh, there's more in the bag. Second jump right there.
There is very few things more satisfying than when you get that bag and you're like, oh man, this is a meal. It's a meal. The bag is a meal. All right. Things are getting away from me here. I'm going to have to just draft for value right now. I do need to get an entree on there. So we're going to go Chick-fil-A. Stay with me. Chick-fil-A. Spicy chicken sandwich deluxe. I think that they're very undervalued. It's a lot of bang for your buck. I like it. I like pairing it with the picnic fries. And we think that we can really they can really grow in this organization.
We did our due diligence on a bunch of the Chick-fil-A team members.
Okay.
And we went to a couple of different games and we sent some scouts out. We really crunched the film. But really, and all that was great. That where we had problems was there were some character red flags with Chick-fil-A for us. And, it just made us a little nervous about bringing some of that energy into our organization. But if you have the culture to help sustain that and to steer them in the right direction, I mean, tons of upside with that pick.
I appreciate the kind words, and you are right. We are aware of some issues from the cultural side, and for us, we do have faith in our culture that we can sort of put that to the side and use this as a teachable moment, because we are building a solid team. We've got a great front office, and so we're excited about where things go. Now, that being said, we do need to figure out what we're doing for an appetizer, a value item here. So I'm just going to put for my app in the 5th pick in this draft, going on established ability, and also having multiple skills in the repertoire. We've got to go with the 6-piece spicy nugget from Wendy's, and we're pairing that with barbecue sauce.
That's a very strong. I mean, you're a little one dimensional now as a team with all the chicken.
Okay,
but if you make that a strength and the centerpiece of your organization, then, I mean, as long as that's the vision from the top down, I think that could be a great 1-2 combo.
Yeah, we think this keeps us competitive, but not reinventing the wheel. Some people might say it is a little conservative, but for us, again, we want to win. We want to win meals, and that means you're going to have to go with a system that works for you. So we're feeling pretty good about that, and so you've got the 6th and 7th pick here.
Yeah, and we're got a couple of players on the board that we're looking at here, but I feel really good about our dessert choice.
Oh,
and maybe I'm being a little too vague with this selection, but I feel like it's allowed.
Okay,
I'm going with the cookout milkshake.
Oh wow, that is a showstopper. Oh my god!
It's a versatile player. You have 5 tool players in baseball. You have like 40 tool players with the cookout milkshake.
You can even go further because you can basically do any kind of combo you want with the flavors.
There's so many. I couldn't choose just one. It's like an array of post moves. So you don't want to just do the up and under. You don't want to just do the baby hook. You got to mix some different things in there.
That is a solid pick. Oh my gosh.
Now, for our last selection, just like your organization, there's been some heavy scouting at Bojangles over the years for us.
Oh, boy.
And we're going to go with a player that's a little under the radar. And a lot of casual fans don't even know that this player's on the team. Maybe it's because they can't watch games where they live. It is a little bit of a regional selection. But Bojangles has a cheddar biscuit.
Wait, they do?
Yes. Where it's basically just cheese and a Bojangles biscuit, and it's put together. There's cheese dripping out the side. It's just your classic Bojangles biscuit with some cheese as a little side item. We were tempted to go with the Bo-Berry.
That's what I thought you were going.
Listen, long been one of my absolute favorite players, and this might be a little bit blasphemous to not do that, but we felt like we needed the versatility of the milkshake, and we didn't want to double down. I feel like we've got enough on the team, and we need to address some other needs. So let's get the Bojangles I forget what the exact name of the menu item is.
Okay.
We are going with the Bojangles cheddar biscuit.
Okay, that's a strong pick. I mean, you've drafted incredibly well. I mean, we really have two different styles here, and that dessert pick was that was a knockout punch. I'm getting a lot of texts from people in the front office. They're saying that should have been us. So we got to really keep our eyes open. So I've got the eighth and final pick here, and this is a tough one. I had to really fight for this because one thing you don't want to do as a GM is you don't want to get your personal preferences too mixed in, because you are trying to build a team, not a pet project.
Yeah, you got to stay objective here.
Yeah, but that was really hard for me with this pick because essentially this is something that's never let me down when it's working, when the machine is working, and of course I'm talking about the Reese's McFlurry from McDonald's. Again, it's a risky pick because people might start looking and say, "Well, what about reliability?" Sometimes you're there, and they give you 48 minutes. Other times, you get nothing out of them. Like Rodman back in the day, where you kind of had to give him a couple of days off. So, but I'm sticking to my guns here. I think it's a solid pick. It's a personal preference, but I think it's a solid pick for building a good meal here.
I admire that strategy because you're focused more on the high end ceiling of the team, and
there we go.
Especially once you get that McFlurry machine into your organization and you get it in shape, and you have trust in your mechanical training staff to make sure that things are working. And to be honest, I mean, I've done a little reading, and I've seen some people suggest that there were certainly games that the McFlurry machine could have played, but the coaches kind of held them out because they didn't want to have to re-clean afterwards. So I don't know if you can put all that on the player. And, look at it. The Reese's McFlurry has been a high level player in a power conference, 4-year starter. And sometimes when you've been around that long, people just love to find parts of your game to pick apart.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the reason that it slept this far in the draft. And I got to say, I like the lineup you're putting together over there. The menu, dare I say.
Well, thank you. The results, I've added the results to our notes. Just to recap, we'll start with Rich's team. The entree, the In-N-Out double animal style. The side, Cajun Five Guys fries. The dessert, the Cookout milkshake. The value item, Bojangles cheddar biscuit. For me, the entree, Chick-fil-A spicy chicken deluxe. The side, picnic fries, Bojangles extra seasoning, please, or just give me the seasoning thing. The appetizer value item, 6-piece spicy nugget with barbecue sauce. The dessert, the McDonald's Reese's McFlurry. Very compelling draft here. This is good. And we've been talking about doing this again for a while.
We have. It feels good to do. And I don't know if our teams faced off. I don't know who would win. But based on this whole draft, I do know who is winning. And that is obesity and type 2 diabetes. So,
I was going to say, could you imagine eating this in one sitting?
I mean, I feel like we have to now.
Yeah. Jeez. They have to go to all these different restaurants. Gosh.
I think we could at least do we can get them in the summer league and at least get a little bit of a taste of what we might be able to expect. But as we've spent a lot of time talking about on the show, rushing guys back onto the court and playing games, I don't think is the right move right now. So
yep.
I agree with being cautious, and it's good to have all these guys in the fold. And as things start to open up and get a little safer, then maybe we can see how they perform on the court.
Excellent. Couldn't have said it better myself. Another successful fast food draft. We'll have to get those results up on Twitter and all that.
And if you're on Twitter and you do follow us at The Word Podcast, or even if you don't, you definitely should.
Yes.
I'd love to hear from you.
What is it?
And we'll tweet this out from the account.
Uh-huh.
But we'd love to get some other perspective. We know there are a lot of armchair GMs out there just like us. You've done the research. You've watched the film. You've crunched the numbers. We want to hear from you. What makes up your ideal team in a fast food draft?
I love it. At The Word Podcast is the handle. another successful fast food draft, another episode of The Word in the can, and we shall return. I'm just updating the draft stats here. We shall return, obviously, next week on all your streaming platforms. We've got, Google. There's so many of them now. Google Podcasts. We've got Apple Podcasts, Spreaker.com, and you can look up the show. Spotify, trying to get that Joe Rogan money. The episodes are also uploaded to YouTube if you'd rather ingest it that way. Yeah. So as always, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Word Podcast, Sports News and Stuff. For my esteemed colleague, Richard Bruce Pacino Abernathy.
He is James Israel Bojangles Mundia. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope it was a bright spot in a dark world in these trying times. But we appreciate you listening and downloading. Everybody take care, and we'll see you next week.